This is the Mark Dolan Way. Top tips for mind, body and soul, some great life hacks, and my favourite products of the week. This show is available on all podcast platforms, or you can watch it. Just subscribe to the Mark Dolan Way on YouTube and join the Facebook group. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show. I hope you are very well. 4 words, go the extra mile. I'm absolutely buzzing because this is episode 63 and finally we have a very good microphone. So I don't know if you've heard previous episodes, but I've had big problems with my Shure microphone, which I foolishly purchased with a micro USB interface. Now, look, this show is not about technology. It's not sciencey in any way because I am not sciencey, but that's just an old plug-in thing. It's ancient. It's last century and I should never have bought it, but the brand was Shure, which is a good microphone, so I bought it. Anyway, for some reason, this connection, you plug in the lead into the microphone and I've had it there. It's just been plugged into the microphone for all of these podcasts. Really secure, not moved around at all, no traveling with it. Anyway, it just broke. It just sort of fell apart. It became loose by itself. And I was very unhappy and I wasted a lot of money. Then I had this temporary travel microphone by a company called Tonor, Tonor. And we've been using that now for weeks and weeks. That's what you've been listening to on this podcast, is a Tonor travel mic. The problem with it is that it's really basic. It's cheapo, £29 from Amazon. When you plug it into the iPhone, it's just crazily loud and it overmodulates. And then just in this studio setting, it's a subpar audio quality. It's all right. It does the job. And let's be honest, this podcast is certainly about getting the job done, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there, churn it out, baby. But I'm absolutely delighted because I have been for many weeks now looking at a better microphone solution for this show. By the way, there is a broader life metaphor. This is not just me ranting about microphones. But I'd been looking at Shure microphones and I was thinking of spending, do you want to know how much? £400 on a proper up-to-date Shure microphone. Can you imagine? What an amount of money to spend. So I was considering doing it. I was kind of all ready to do it because it was my birthday a few weeks ago and I turned 50 and some people, like loved ones, I said, look, I don't need like socks or a tie or whatever, but I'm thinking of upgrading the audio in my studio. So if you want to contribute to that. So there were some contributions. I was very, very grateful for that. And so I was all set to get this Shure microphone, but let's not forget, this is a brand that's let me down in the past, and that's a lot of money to spend. So I went on Amazon, I was about to get it, and I found the microphone that I'm now speaking to you on, and it is called a Tonor TD510. Tonor TD510. And let me tell you that it cost 70 quid. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. 70 quid. With like a proper arm on it and everything. And I think you'll agree it sounds great. Doesn't it sound great? Well, I've compared it. I've done some recordings. I've compared it to the podcasts recorded on the Shure. And I think it's the same, if not better. So really happy to have this microphone working. What is the life lesson there? Well, obviously, shop around and don't be seduced by the big brands. And Tonor, I don't know the deal with Tonor, Tonor, but I would imagine that it's a Chinese company. I'm only guessing, and I don't wish to prejudge, but it strikes me as a copy of the Shure for a fraction of the price. So that's what I think. And, you know, I had problems with my Shure microphone. And by the way, this show will never be sponsored by Shure because I've been very critical of them. For good reason. The product let me down massively. I tried to fix with my son, tried to fix the Shure microphone, and we took it apart, and there's nothing in it. When you like open it up and unscrew it, there's just like a tiny couple of bits in there. It's very not substantial, and they're asking for a lot of money for this gear. And well done, Tonor, for asking me for £70. Oh my goodness! Yes, please. So I'm really excited about that. And so the first message is shop around. The second message is go the extra mile. So let me tell you that when I do this podcast, I have the microphone and I've got the laptop and I've got the camera and I've got the lights. So I try to make all of that really good. Got these excellent lights, again from Amazon. I'm well lit. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my son's football shirt. He plays, or used to play, football for a local team, and I'm basically wearing a 14-year-old boy's football shirt at the moment. Because do you know something? Although many of you listen to this show, it's also a visual product, and some of you watch it on YouTube. And I like to wear different outfits for you. I like to churn it up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And keep it fresh. Anyway, yada yada. So we're well lit. We've got a decent microphone. We've got the laptop. But there's one other thing I do, and it's a hassle every time, and that is that I have this very spongy fabric which I surround the microphone with. And it's annoying because when I'm not recording in the studio, it's an eyesore and it gets in the way. So I've started packing it away in a cupboard. So whenever I do the podcast or any filming or recording in this studio, I have to get it out of the cupboard, and I have to unpack it and set it up, and I put it in front of and around the microphone. And the reason why is because it softens the sound. If you want a parallel, imagine being in a room with carpets versus a room with hard wooden floors. The acoustics in the carpeted room are going to be warmer and softer. And so that's what I do and I never feel like it when I sit down, because I've got this working desk. It's a normal desk, and I could just so easily do the podcast at the desk with the microphone. Job's a good one. But I go the extra mile, and I drag out this foam and I unroll it and I assemble it and I put it in. And I put it in because it sounds 10% better. And 10% is a lot. It's worth it. What is 10%? It's the extra mile. So in your life, whatever you're doing, at work, in your relationships, as a parent, friendships, go the extra mile. So I've got my little pod, and I've got my lighting, and I've got my green screen backdrop. I've got the laptop, got a good Tonor TD510 microphone. I've got notes because I've thought about what I want to talk to you about. It's not just thrown together. And I have the foam. I've got the pillows. By the way, the foam was recycled because we had a mattress which was made of foam, and we were throwing it away. And I've got this thing, whenever you're throwing anything away, always have a think before you do. Does this have any other use in my life? Anything in your home that has no further use, you must get rid of it. The number of people that store stuff that they will never use, that they will never look at, is crazy. So don't be one of those people. So if there's something you're not using, get rid. Let it be gone. And also, I'm obsessed with getting rid of technology that's slightly broken or doesn't work properly. So I was having a big tidy up today, and I found some Christmas lights. And when you plug them in, half the lights light and half the lights don't light. So like the circuit is broken halfway through. So you've got half the lights on, half the lights not on. I have sent these Christmas lights away. They've been banished from my kingdom. They've gone to the local dump because they got an area for electricals, and hopefully they recycle them properly. But I can't have kit that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So I can't have an iPhone charger where, have you had this where you plug in your iPhone or your smartphone to charge and it doesn't charge, and then you turn the cable around and then it does charge? So it like only charges on one side. I don't want you in my life, because what will happen is I'll be in Singapore and I will be on 1% on my phone. I will urgently need power, and I'll plug this stupid faulty cable in, and then it will let me down exactly when I need it. So banish anything that's faulty from your life. Just get rid of it. If it can't be fixed, get rid. And if you're not using stuff and not going to use it, get rid. Forget about, I might use it in 7 years' time from now. Gone, gone, gone. Less is more. I promise you. I promise you. So therefore, but I was looking at this, I'm shouting now. I was looking at this. How are the levels on the tonal? I think they're quite good. Hello. Hello. It's very smooth, isn't it? Honestly, I'm so happy. I mean, I hope you're happy with the sound. I hope I'm not overselling it. Maybe you're listening to this and hating the acoustics, but I think it's decent. My background is in radio. I've been in broadcasting for over 20 years. I started in radio, so I care very much about the microphone as a device and the studio thing. Now, but yeah, so we were getting rid of this mattress because we didn't need it anymore and it was getting in the way. And I took the cover off and it was just a bunch of foam. It was a foam mattress. And I thought, well, that would be good for acoustics. So I took out a Stanley knife, which is like a really sharp blade, and I sort of sliced it up, and I just basically got myself a couple of chunks of foam, and I thought I would use that for this studio. So the chunks are, I don't know, 1 meter wide and 0.5 meter deep, and it's great, and it softens everything up very nicely. Go the extra mile. There's a nice quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger in his book, Be Useful, which I can highly recommend. I've mentioned it on a previous podcast. And he said, that's episode, I'm actually looking at the notes for episode 62, which is a mistake because we've already quite literally done that show. He said, oh yeah, do what you said you were going to do, but do it slightly better. Isn't that brilliant? So exceed expectations, I think, is the way to go. And I agree with Arnold, and he's had a very successful life. He's been Mr. Universe several times, so strongest man in the world, most muscular bodybuilder. Then he was the biggest film star in the world. And then he was governor of California. He would have been president, but being an Austrian, he wasn't allowed. He's had what can only be described as the perfect career. But go the extra mile. Go the extra mile. It's 4 words. Go the extra mile. It will serve you so well in your life, in your relationships, with your partner. You're meeting them for dinner or whatever, and you get there early because you want to be there when they arrive. That is going the extra mile. You've got a company report to do, and you're supposed to do, I don't know, a day's work on it. It's supposed to take a day of your time, and you give it 2 days. You've gone the extra mile. You're like, I only have to do a day on this company report. I'm going to give it 2 days because you've gone the extra mile. This show could easily be called the 5%. The idea of this program is to put you in the top 5% of human beings who are the happiest, most successful, richest, most prolific, fulfilled, productive, making the world a better place. That's what I want to place you in, that 5%. And the people who are in the 5%, right? The 95%, they're just like, they're coasting. They're treading water. They're cutting corners. They're doing it the easy way, taking the road more traveled. I'm taking you on the road less traveled. I'm putting you in the 5%. Those are the people that walk to the end of the train platform where the carriages are less full, rather than the other people who are bunched in the middle because they can't be bothered to walk to the end of the carriage. And the easiest way to propel yourself into the top 5% is to go the extra mile. It's 4 words. Go the extra mile. And by the way, the extra mile is not that tiring. It's not that hard. For me, it's putting foam around the microphone so that the sound of the podcast is a tiny bit better. Let me give you a great example of my total hero is Gus Dudgeon. Do you know Gus Dudgeon? He is Elton John's producer, or was. He sadly died. And what a great loss he is. Gus Dudgeon was responsible for all of Elton John's iconic albums in the 1970s, particularly from 1970 to 1976. You're looking at monster albums like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and Caribou and the Elton John album and Tumbleweed Connection and Blue Moves and Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. You don't need a list of Elton John albums, but let me tell you that this was the era of Crocodile Rock, Daniel, Saturday Night's Right for Fighting, Candle in the Wind, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. All the Elton songs, your song, you name it, every hit, produced by Gus Dudgeon. And Gus Dudgeon was a record producer, right? Now, that's something that anybody can, Elton John could have done his albums with any good producer, and the albums would have been great because, let's be honest, the material was very strong. Elton John's vocal, Bernie Taupin's lyrics. You can't really have, can you, an Elton John album from the 70s that's not going to be good. It'll be good. It's a bit like if I kidnapped William Shakespeare and got him to write me a play. Likelihood it's going to be a good play. But what does Gus Dudgeon add? Well, he just takes it up a level. So he takes a remarkable talent like Elton John and all those amazing songs, all that great material. And his job is, as the producer, to record it and to mix it and to add strings and electric guitar and decide about the balance of the sound. So his job is to take the genius of Elton John and make him better and do the bit that Elton John can't do. Okay? So anyway, and by the way, this guy's got pedigree, Gus Dudgeon. He was the producer of the David Bowie Space Oddity song, Ground Control to Major Tom. He produced that, which is one of the great musical productions of all time. Elton John heard that and said, I'd love this guy to be my producer. And this is before Elton made it. So, by the way, if you're looking for one of the very best Elton John albums, it's called Elton John, right? It's an eponymous title. Elton John, that's what it's called. It's from 1970, and it's got Border Song on it. It's got Take Me to the Pilot, and it's got your song. It's an incredible album, The Greatest Discovery, I Need You to Turn To. Genius. Oh, my God. Orchestration and strings. Anyway, all produced by Gus Dudgeon. So, look, here, I'll cut to the chase. In what way did Gus Dudgeon go the extra mile? Well, when he was recording the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album, he wasn't happy with how the piano sounded, and he understood the importance of the piano sound on an Elton John album. So anybody else, all other producers, would slap a microphone over the piano. Elton plays the piano part, they record that. Then Elton records the vocal, and then they mix them together. That's generally how albums were made, still made to this day. But Gus Dudgeon is not happy with the sound of the piano. Now, this is a producer he's got a microphone, top microphones, pointed at the piano. Elton plays the piano part, and Gus Dudgeon plays it back, and he's not happy. And why is that? Well, because Gus Dudgeon wants it to be better. Remember, what did I say about Arnold Schwarzenegger? Do what you said you were going to do, but do it slightly better. So Gus Dudgeon's job is to record Elton John. By the way, what a responsibility. Imagine you're the producer, and it's like, oh, what are you doing at the moment? Oh, I'm recording an album called Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It's got Benny and Jets on it. And Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And it's got Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and what's the other one? It's got at least 4 hits on it, that album. Saturday Night, Candle in the Wind, that was the other one. How could I forget Candle in the Wind, for God's sakes? Do you know what I mean? That, by the way, that album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, is basically Elton John's Thriller, if you like. It's his Sgt. Pepper's. Anyway, so what does Gus Dudgeon do? Go the extra mile. This is about you, by the way. This is not about Elton John. It's not about the late great Gus Dudgeon. It's about you, which is about making things better than they have to be and going the extra mile, making that little bit of effort, which only 5% of people do. Gus Dudgeon was not happy about the piano sound. Any other producer would have played back the piano and said, that's great, let's mix it with the vocals. But Gus Dudgeon did not say that's great because he thought it could be better. So what he did is he had a carpenter come in and construct a massive empty piano, right? Construct an empty piano. So there's a piano structure, but with no piano bits in it, just this piano-shaped block of wood. And he had this pretend wooden piano installed over Elton's piano. This massive wooden structure, which is just covering Elton John's piano, and then he sticks the microphone inside. And the reason why is because then when Elton plays Candle in the Wind and all those other songs, the sound of the piano reverberates through this contained space and it bounces off the wood and it goes into the microphone and it creates this warm sound. So the piano on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album is just off the charts. And it's because Gus Dudgeon went the extra mile and constructed an empty piano which went over Elton's piano. And that's how he recorded it. Isn't that amazing? I think that's great. And I think it's an example of what we all can do, which is that we can all go the extra mile. We can all, in our own equivalent way, we can be like Gus Dudgeon and we can install the empty piano over the existing piano to make it that bit better. And by the way, this is not perfectionism, because on this show, you'll have heard in the past that perfectionism is potentially overrated, right? I think potentially the problem with perfectionism is that stuff has to be so good that you never do it because you're so overwhelmed by the burden of delivering this perfect thing. So in the end, what you do is you don't do it. You just collapse under the weight of expectation. But that's not what Gus Dudgeon has done, and what you're going to do when you go the extra mile, and me with my foam mattress around the microphone, is that it is not that difficult. It's not perfectionism, but it's just making it a tiny bit better. There is that amazing guy called Dave Brailsford, who was the boss of Team Sky, the cycling team that featured Bradley Wiggins and others. Now, these people, that Team Sky, they won unprecedented numbers of medals and Grand Prix. No, what's it called? There's Tour de France, all that stuff. They just won the Tour de France back to back multiple times. Brits hadn't won it for God knows how many decades, and then they came in to dominate the sport. And Dave Brailsford, he wasn't some impossible perfectionist. What he believed in is something called marginal gains, where he would try to just make the method of the team better by 1% every day. And one example is that he had a truck when they were on the road, on the tour. He had a truck. And in that truck contained his team's mattresses. And so whatever hotel they went into, they would sleep on the same mattress, right? Because the mattresses would go into the hotel each night, different hotels. And it meant that they're in a different room, but they're on the same mattress every night. Now, that's not a game changer. That's not going to win you the Tour de France, but it's a bit like Gus Dudgeon's empty piano. It's an incremental improvement that just takes it a little bit further along. And if you take Dave Brailsford with his mattresses and Bradley Wiggins gets the same mattress every night, that's just one thing. And if you think of every aspect of, how much hydration they get, how much sleep they get, how much food they get, how much training they get, all of that stuff, if you just look to make everything a little bit better, it's going to go a long way and it will deliver results. So I hope you're very well. How was your week? I hope you've had a very good week. This podcast, oh my God, I'm in a world of trouble. It is so late. I want to apologize to you. It was supposed to drop on Sunday, and I think that when it drops will ultimately be Monday or Tuesday, which is wild. So I need to get slightly ahead with the pods, but it was Easter and I was away and I got sidetracked. And all I can say, it was a systems failure. And I need to work on that, because a big aspect of this podcast, yes, I sit here and I pronounce to you about all these great things that you could and should be doing. But that's because I could and should be doing them too. And I am as human and as frail as you are. And that's why the podcast is quite literally late. So we have to work on that. My plan, which I will do, is to stockpile pods so that then there's like a ready supply. So I in an ideal world, I would be like 3 or 4 ahead. And that way, if I have a busy week, it doesn't matter if one isn't recorded. So that is the plan. But apologies for keeping you waiting on that one. Let's have a look. We've got lots, actually, of things I need to power through with you. I have just come back from a holiday. I was in Cornwall and I loved it with my 2 sons. And we were in a hotel which was rubbish. And let me tell you that rubbish hotels are amazing. You've got to stay in rubbish hotels. First of all, it was noisy. I was woken up by a bin collection at about 7 a.m. the first morning. The room was tiny, which I had to share with these 2 young men. The breakfast was basic, to say the least, with scrambled egg that had clearly been cooked with too much milk. It was basically, you know, when you have sort of that pre-made scrambled egg in a buffet, and it's like a cake. It's like an eggy cake, sort of spongy. Thanks, but no thanks. So the breakfast was basic and the service intermittent. But let me tell you that we loved it. And I would go back there all day long. Why? Well, first of all, it's funny to go to a slightly rubbish hotel. Secondly, it's cheaper, which is brilliant. It was a great price. Thirdly, I mean, how bad can the breakfast be? Do you know what I mean? I had my toast, I had my eggs, I had some bacon, I had coffee. You've got everything you need. I've made documentaries around the world, and those hotels have been paid for by television companies. So I've stayed in really posh places. There's no bloody difference between posh hotels and cheap hotels. Honestly, it's fine. The only hotel I don't like is the kind of roadside motel type hotels where you don't get breakfast in the morning. I think there's something sad about staying in a hotel. You wake up in the morning and you have to like get in the car and drive somewhere to get breakfast. I don't like that. I like to be in a hotel and wander down, get myself a coffee, get myself a breakfast. So that's, my expectations for hotels are very low, but I loved it. And we had great banter with the evening manager. I'm going to name her. She was called Nikki, and she was from South Africa, and she was a great character. And I noticed something which I can share with you, which is something happened, and it's what I call day 2 syndrome. When I made my documentaries for Channel 4, which are called The World's and Me, so like the world's smallest man, the world's tallest woman, the world's cleverest kid, the world's most enhanced woman, did all these shows for Channel 4. They're all on the Channel 4 website if you want to check them out. A few bits on YouTube as well. I noticed when I would go and meet these people for my documentaries, I didn't get much material on day 1. And I think it's because they're like, who is this guy? They're on camera. They feel self-conscious. And then, so I would do filming with them and get pretty much no material. And it's like, at that point, we're panicking. It's like, we don't have a show at the moment because these interviews have been rubbish. But then what happens, I noticed, is day 2 syndrome, which is you go back the next day. You go off to when you're doing documentary, you go off to your hotel and you hang out with your crew. And then you go back the next day to meet the person again that's in the documentary. And then the second day, I noticed that they were like always happier and more relaxed around me. And the reason why is because on day 1, they're thinking, well, I'm going on TV and what's this guy going to do? And does he have a plan? Am I going to look stupid? They're self-conscious and their defenses are up. But by day 2, it's like, oh, they've had a chance to sleep on it. They're like, I had a nice time yesterday. This Mark guy seems fine. He seems nice. And then day 2, bang, you get all your material and you become mates with the subject of the documentary, and it all beautifully flows. Well, that happened with me and Nikki, the night manager, the evening manager of this hotel, because when I got there, I was cracking jokes and I was messing around, and she didn't really engage. She gave me short shrift. No, she wasn't rude or anything, but she wasn't chuckling or anything. It was a slightly stilted affair. But then the next evening, bang, 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 Nikki and I, the banter was flowing, mega lols, stories, anecdotes. It was great. And we were in. So we completely bonded. Myself and my sons bonded with Nikki. She was fantastic. There's the most awful health and safety nightmare of a lift, which says that maximum of 6 people. But that was maximum 6 people. This lift would have been from like the 1960s. It was an ancient lift. And when it says maximum 6 persons, that was 6 people in the 1960s. That's not 6 people. 3 people, sorry. No, 6. Maximum, how many was it? 4. Can I apologize? It was maximum 4 people. But we're not talking about 4 people in 2024. It's going to be heavier than 4 average people in the 60s, is all I'm going to say. I think now, in this century, it's maximum 2 people. Anyway, so we were in this lift, my 2 sons and a lady, and she was in there. She was very cross with my son because he didn't press the button properly to get the lift open, and she was like rolling her eyes to the ceiling. It was interesting. She wasn't pulling her punches, let me tell you. But we got in, and I don't know, she was a kind of stiff and awkward character and not very friendly, but I'm sometimes a bit of a bull in a china shop. And what I sometimes do is if someone is difficult or awkward, I kill them with kindness. So even though she doesn't seem like she's very chatty and she doesn't seem to like us, I'm like, hello, are you having a nice holiday? I'm straight in there. I'm going the other way with this. I'm owning this. I'm all over this lady like a rash, conversationally. And we're chatting. And, she opened up and she had this clutch of milk sachets in her hand, right? Milk sachets. Because do you remember in the old days when you went to a hotel and you'd have the tea and coffee making facilities and you'd have these small little plastic pots of milk, which you'd have to sort of crack open at the top, like a little bit of foil, which you would peel off. They don't do those anymore. I don't know why. Probably environmentally unfriendly. And now you get these sort of long, slim fingers of milk, like a kind of plastic sachet, and you tear it open at the top and you squeeze it into your tea. So she had a load of those, and I don't know why, but she said she'd been given a load of milk. And then she insisted that my son take some. She's like, would you like some? He's like, I'm okay. She's like, go on, it'll be good for the room. So we're being randomly given milk by a lady in a lift. We've got banter with the night manager. The breakfast is borderline inedible, but we're happy. Why? Because the hotel was cheap and cheerful. And there were just these characters around. I was chatting with the hotel guests. And if I was at some posh grand hotel with middle-class people who have got money and status and privilege, they'd look straight through you. There's no engagement. There's no banter. No one's giving you sachets of milk in the elevator of the Grand Hotel in Brighton or the Waldorf Astoria in London or God knows what else, the Ritz. Not at all. So cheap and cheerful is brilliant. And we had a great time in this rubbish hotel. And I'll go back there. And I was asked for a review of the hotel. And I gave it 5 stars and said I wouldn't change a thing. Now, this is, just to reiterate, this is a hotel that's not very good. Okay? It's got worn out carpets. There's no soundproofing between the rooms. There was one room where when you walk past, a dog was barking. Whenever we walked past the room, a dog would maniacally bark. I felt so sorry for the people in the room and the people next door, because we would like come in at sort of like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and the dog would like start barking again. I'm thinking the people in that room have probably just fallen asleep and the dog has woken them up. By the way, that's how bad this hotel was, that they had dogs in the room. I mean, I think that's not great, is it? A hotel with dogs in? No way, that's terrible. Well, it was a terrible hotel, but we loved it. And I'll be going back there soon. And I gave it 5 stars. And I even name-checked Nikki because I thought she was so awesome. But the older I get, the more I actually enjoy cheap stuff. I used to think that you had to spend big money to get great things. And I think that's not the case anymore, especially with China, because China has gained the art of producing high quality, good things very cheaply. When I was a kid, cheap stuff was worse because I'm 50 now. And when I was growing up in the 80s, the difference between a Mercedes-Benz and a Ford was absolutely colossal. The Ford and Fiats and God knows what else, those cars would break down, they'd wear out, they would rust, they just didn't work properly, they were rubbish. And then a Mercedes-Benz worked correctly and looked good and didn't rust and was well built, never died. My dad had a Merc, I think it was a 1981 280 CE coupe, and it was just like a bloody tank. He drove it to the end of the earth and back. Family holidays in that thing, literally every year. What did it need? An oil change, some air in the tires, the occasional brake pad. That was it. That my dad's car for 15, 20 years, just oil change and brake pad. That was it. There was nothing went wrong with it. The gearbox, the transmission, rock solid. No rust. This thing was incredible. And the only thing that killed it is that my dad pulled over on the motorway and he stopped at a really awkward position and someone went into the back of him and the car was written off, which is annoying because the car was still fine, but because someone bumped into the back of it, it bent the chassis, and that's, I guess, a safety issue, and the car had to be scrapped, which is a real shame because that thing would never have died. But that was the difference. In the old days, you had to spend the money. Mercedes-Benz was a lot more expensive than a Ford, but it was worth the cash. Whereas now, not really. Look at you. I'm talking to you on a Tonor microphone, which is probably Chinese, and it's 25% the price of the branded Shure alternative. Cheap stuff is great. What was I going to tell you? I've got an example of that. Yes. And this is important, by the way, which is that it's very important in life to accept stuff. So I bought some tennis shoes for my son, okay? And I went to a shop called Sports Direct, which is really cheap. It's good value. But the price was great. So I looked at these shoes and they were more expensive everywhere else and they were cheap. They were much reduced at Sports Direct. So obviously I'm not stupid. I'll buy them from Sports Direct. So I bought them from Sports Direct and I picked them up and it was all fine. I took them home and they were, I think they were too big for my son. So they had to go back. So I took them back to the shop and I just assumed that I could just give them back because I've bought them from the shop. I've gone back to the shop. The shoes have not been worn. And hi, I'm here to return his shoes. Well, because I've bought them online, even though they were delivered to the shop and it was click and collect, I was responsible for sending them back to Sports Direct. So it's not enough to go into a sports shop and just hand them over. I've got to package them up, go to the post office and send them at my own expense. How wild is that? So you can't bring the shoes back to the shop. You've got to send them. Do you want to know how much it cost me to send these shoes back? £12. £12. That's a fortune. But do you know what? I accepted it. And why is that? Well, because Sports Direct is cheap. And it's cheap because it's not easy to do the returns. And if you do return, you've got to pay for the postage yourself and it's a hassle. You go to the post office to do it. So Sports Direct are cheap for a reason. And it's a trade-off. And I accept that trade-off. And I think we all need to accept these trade-offs. So for example, you have Ryanair, which is a budget airline, and you have to pay quite a lot to take a bag on board. But that's because the flights are cheap. You can't have it always. It's a trade-off. And I accept, when I travel with Ryanair, I accept that there is no hospitality on board. There's no tea or coffee free. There's no free food. You pay for your bag, fine. But I can fly to Brussels for 30 quid, return, if I book in advance. So I think people are greedy sometimes, and I think expectation is very high. And most people would be furious that they would go back to Sports Direct and then they've got to send the shoes back even though they're in store. And I wasn't furious because I just thought, well, it's a cheap shop. What are you going to do? It's cheap for a reason. And I'm very glad that a cheap shop like Sports Direct exists, and I accepted their terms. And it's the same with Ryanair. Ryanair is a little bit rubbish, but it's cheap. So do you know what I mean? If you want the kind of 5-star VIP treatment, then go British Airways and spend 3 times the amount. But I'm quite happy. I'm quite content with Ryanair. I'm quite content with Sports Direct. I'm quite content with my rubbish 3-star hotel in Cornwall, which frankly should be probably 1.5 to 2 stars. Keep it simple. Expectations are low. I get it. It's cheap for a reason, and I'm very glad that it is. Okay, folks, listen, I think we are wrapping things up. Where are we? We're at the 40-minute mark. It's been a joy and a thrill to talk to you. And we've got a lot of other issues to get through next week on next week's show. Can't even read my writing there. Meat on holes? Oh, go on then, really quickly before I go. Which is that I'm on a bit of a budget push at the moment. And I do find that when I'm on holiday, I spend a lot of money in restaurants. I don't know if you do this as well, but we didn't have self-catering, so we have to go out to eat. And you can really crank up the costs with eating out. So this time I took 1 kilogram of mince, beef mince, which I pressure cooked for 2 hours. If you don't have a pressure cooker, you can take 1 kilo of mince and you can simply simmer it with a lid on for 4 hours and it will have the same effect. I took this with me and I grazed on it during the holiday, and it meant that when I went to the restaurant, I didn't need to enormously order huge amounts of food because I've already had some meat. So take meat with you on holiday. My dad used to, when we were small, we once went to Playa de las Americas, which is in Tenerife, which is a very nice Spanish island, nowhere near Spain, interestingly. It's off the coast of Africa. Great climate. It's a dry heat. It's arid. It never gets too hot, never gets too cold. The climate in the Canary Islands is quite literally perfect. And my dad used to bring cheese with him and Irish sausages and God knows what else on holiday because he was quite a conservative eater and he was not going to be touching garlic or onions or any of that stuff. So maybe I've picked that up from him. But when you travel, when you go on holiday, take food with you. Or when you're there, go to the supermarket, do a big supermarket shop and have stuff in the hotel room so that you're not starving when you go to a restaurant. Because if you're on holiday and you're starving in the restaurant, you will spend £1 million. So I had my kilo of pressure cooked meat and I grazed on that. We were just away for 3 days, but it was just it was a backup. Do you know what I mean? It was really, really good and it hit the spot. So when you travel, take some meat or take some food supplies with you and it will save you a blinking fortune. And last not least, I don't know if I've told you this before in a previous pod, and if I have, I want to apologise, but it's so good, I'll repeat it, and maybe I haven't told you. Gordon Ramsay, who I'm a big fan of, greatest chef in the world, so many Michelin stars, he's also a TV host, he's a cultural icon. I think he's amazing. I think the reason why he's so good is because he does in the kitchen what Gus Dudgeon did in the studio, which is he goes the extra mile. What is Gordon Ramsay's great crime? His great crime is wanting high standards and wanting things to be as good as they can be. Do what you said you were going to do, but do it slightly better. That's what Gordon Ramsay does. That's what Gus Dudgeon does. That's what these great people do. And you are that great person, okay? And I'm that great person. And we can do this. We can be Gordon Ramsay, Gus Dudgeon, Elton John, Paul McCartney, Steve Jobs, J.K. Rowling, Florence Nightingale. Trying to think of great people. So it was Gordon Ramsay, and it was on a podcast. And he was asked about his life advice. And he said, I've got 3 things, right? 3 pieces of advice that will change your life. And he said they are the following. Just looking for my notes and trying to find them. Where is it? Where's it gone? Got it here somewhere. What? Oh, there we go. Found it. He said, Gordon Ramsay. So these are Gordon Ramsay's 3 top tips for life. And I'll leave you with this. Top tip number 1, be a sponge. So what he meant by that is listen to the people around you, especially people that are really good at what they do, and suck it all in. Right? A sponge is a dry chunk of material which is able to absorb liquid. That's what a sponge is, isn't it? It's dry, it's crunchy, and it's built to absorb material, water. So you should be intellectually, mentally, creatively, you should be a sponge. So you just listen. I mean, for this podcast and for my life, I read a lot of books. I listen to podcasts. I watch TV shows. I look at clips online. Always gathering material for the show. So I'm like a sponge. And I do it in my day job as well, when I present a current affairs show. And I read the newspapers every day. And I'm hoovering it all up. And I suck it all in. I'm like a sponge. So that's the first thing. Be a sponge. Suck in information. Absorb from a diversity of sources. So there's so much politics these days, which is really dividing people, okay? Well, I have a fix for that, which is don't read a left-wing newspaper, don't read a right-wing newspaper, read all of them. Because if you read a left-wing newspaper, a middle ground newspaper, and a right-wing newspaper, if you read all of them, then your amazing brain power will process all of that, and then you will settle on your view, your judgment. But you've had input from a diverse set of opinions. These days we're very tribal, so we're in one group, you're left, you're right, this and that, you're vegan, you're carnivore, do you know what I mean? Everyone's in a tribe. You need to get out of that and expose yourself to all views and all opinions, suck it all up and be a sponge, and then you take in all that information, you churn it out, and you come out the other side. And I think that's a great thing. So, be a sponge, Gordon Ramsay said. The second one is get a thick skin. Okay, so develop a thick skin. Criticism, just swallow it. Take it, baby. Suck it up. Okay, life is hard. Life is brutal. It's a battle. It's a war. Just have a thick skin. Be tough. You know, I do comedy gigs. They don't always go well. That's okay. You go back, you go again. You go better. Failure is a tremendous thing. It teaches you a lot. I do my TV show. We do very well, but sometimes the ratings are not good. You're just like, okay, the ratings are tough. Life is difficult. Suck it up. Get on with it. Make the show better. Crack on. Crack on with it. So thick skin is critical. Life is hard. And the third one, which is brilliant, and it's from Gordon Ramsay, is do not take things personally. So if someone criticizes your work, or there's input about your friendship or relationships or whatever it is, but if anything negative that you're receiving from someone, don't take it personally. Use that information that they're giving you and leverage that to make yourself a better person. So if you're at work and someone said, oh, that thing you did yesterday, the presentation wasn't great, it needed this, it needed that, don't take it personally. Just go, oh, thank you for telling me. Write down what they said and see if you can make yourself better. Don't take things personally. So I have that with colleagues where there's a mistake, and I'll just say, hey, there was a mistake in that bit, and I just want to let you know that there is a mistake in that bit. And they should go, okay, thank you for telling me that there's a mistake and I won't do that again. What they shouldn't do is take it personally. I'm pointing out a mistake so that the show can be better. It's not personal. And if you have, I promise you, if you work with people that take stuff personally, it's not sustainable. It's exhausting. It's draining. It's tedious. I've got no appetite for it. You should have no. It's rubbish. If you give someone feedback or criticism and they take it all personally, then forget it. It's a non-starter. It really, if you're in a kitchen, you need to be able to say, hey, listen, those scrambled eggs are rubbish. You need to make them again and make sure they're soft. Now, that is about the scrambled eggs and about the making of the scrambled eggs. It's not about you as a human being. So if you're that junior chef and the chef above you, the senior chef, has said the scrambled eggs are not good enough, then you just go, thank you, chef, and you go again. If you don't know how to make them well, you can say, thank you, chef. I'm struggling with these scrambled eggs. Can I ask you to help me to show me how to make them better? I guarantee you that the chef above you will be so happy that you said that. And the chef will be like, yeah, come over here. Let me show you. There's no way the chef will be angry that you've asked for help. Because when the chef hears that you've asked for help, the message to the chef is that you want to get better. And the chef will be very happy about that. But if the senior chef says to you, the scrambled eggs are bad, and you're like, oh, he hates me, you're not going to last 5 minutes in that kitchen, and there's no place for you in that kitchen. You don't belong there. If you're going to indulge, sorry, I'm being very harsh, but I really feel this strongly. If you're going to indulge in taking stuff personally, you will not prevail. You won't be successful. Because taking stuff personally is A, wrong, because it wasn't personal. When they criticize your scrambled eggs, they're not criticizing you. They're saying the eggs were not well made. So it's an incorrect interpretation to take it personally. And secondly, if you take it personally, that's not about you getting better. So there you go. That is Gordon Ramsay. It's not personal. Don't take stuff personal. Be a sponge. Have a thick skin. I think he's right. This podcast will always cite people who have been very successful, because I think it's great to listen to the thoughts of people who have been very successful, because the proof is in the pudding. They've made it, and therefore they are pretty useful role models for you and me. It's been great chatting. We've hit 51 minutes. I hope you're enjoying the microphone. I'm so happy with it. The reason why I'm happy is because I'm happy that I've got devices and technology that help me to deliver this show as well as it can be delivered, because I want to go the extra mile, because I'm committed to you. I'm committed to this show. I'm committed to our journey, and I'm very excited. So go and have a great week. Big love. Enjoy some rubbish things. Go and book a rubbish hotel now and tell me how brilliant it is, because you're going to have a great time. Except when things are cheap, that they're not going to be great, but that's okay. And if you do what you said you were going to do, but do it slightly better, you will be in the top 5%, and things are going to start happening for you. Have a great week. Stay awesome. And I'll see you in a week's time. Goodbye.